Well, after what felt like a lifetime of waiting, the Nintendo Switch 2 is finally here, and price-related grievances aside, it's pretty damn great. Power-wise, it's a huge leap forward to the point where cross-platform titles almost look on par with their PS5 and Xbox counterparts. The new Joy-Cons are far sturdier and not at all prone to coming loose in handheld mode like with the original Switch. The mouse functionality is such a simple but brilliant addition. We finally got proper native voice chat, it only took them 20 years. And while the LCD screen might feel like a step back, the fact that it's 1080p is a perfectly fair trade-off if you ask me. Like sure, an OLED screen would have been nice, but did you really want this thing to cost even more? But of course, while all these upgrades are very welcome, when it comes to any new Nintendo system, the main attraction is always going to be the games. And Nintendo seems to be carrying over the momentum they built up this past generation, coming out swinging with launchier titles like Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Metroid Prime 4, and Kirby Air Ride 2. What the fuck? Who saw that one coming? And if you could indulge me as I go on a quick tangent, I just want to say that everything about what Mario Kart World is just proves that my video from last year was right on the money. Like, this is exactly what I was talking about. You can find so many deep-cut references to practically every single Mario game, and of course there's the completely unhinged character roster. Like, do you really want to live in a world where you can't play as Moo Moo? Because that's the world we'd be living in if this game turned out to be Nintendo Kart. But anyway, assuming the Switch 2's first-party library is as large as its predecessors, we've got a lot of games to look forward to in the years to come. So I wanted to talk about a few games that I really want to see from Nintendo this generation. Now, I'm not going to waste my time talking about the super obvious ones like 3D Mario and Smash Bros. And Pokemon Gen 10, because yeah, obviously those are all going to come out at some point. And sure, I could mention that I'd like to see the return of long-dormant series like Star Fox, F-Zero, Kid Icarus, and Wario Land, but when it comes to those, I don't really have anything to say beyond I'd like to see them return. Okay, enough blathering, let's just get into this. So first up is a game that basically everybody wants. A Paper Mario game that plays like the first two. I know, absolutely ice fucking cold take here, but who cares? Now obviously the hope is for the next Paper Mario to have traditional turn-based battles, a fleshed out story with lots of memorable characters, and of course the return of the partner mechanic. However, and this take may in fact be a hot one, instead of a group of original characters acting as playable partners, I'd actually prefer it if this time the party were made up of the main Mario cast, which of course includes Luigi and Peach, as well as others like Yoshi, Toad, Daisy, Wario, Waluigi, Donkey Kong, and Rosalina. You see, something I've always liked about the Sonic cast is that the series has always gone to great lengths to really illustrate the bonds Sonic and all his friends have with one another. Like, you can really buy into the idea that all these characters have been through a lot together and always have each other's backs, and I want to see the Mario cast receive that same treatment. Now, I understand that mainline Mario games aren't anywhere near as narrative-driven as most Sonic games, but that isn't the case with most Mario RPGs. I just think it would be really fun and refreshing to see Mario's crew in a setting where they go on this grand adventure and are given the opportunity to play off of one another and establish the same kind of believable camaraderie that Sonic and company have always had. So last year, Nintendo gave us the first original 2D Zelda game in about a decade in the form of Echoes of Wisdom, and it was pretty good. I had fun with it, but I have the same complaints about it that most people have. The echo mechanic, while clever, becomes very overbearing by the later stages of the game because there's just too damn many of them, which means there's a lot of them that I barely ever used, and I spent way too much time scrolling through that piece of shit menu to find the ones I was looking for. And using echoes to fight enemies just isn't as efficient or satisfying as the classic Sword and Shield, which are available but only for limited amounts of time. Echoes of Wisdom was an interesting experiment, but I still don't want it to, nor do I expect it to, become the template for future entries. And I think the best way to breathe new life into the 2D Zelda formula is to turn it into a full-fledged RPG, with turn-based battles, multiple party members, skill trees, the whole shebang. Okay, I know I've only talked about RPG so far, just bear with me, I promise I have other ideas. Now, to be transparent, the Link's Awakening remake is the only traditional 2D Zelda that I've personally played. But assuming that Link's Awakening is more or less indicative of how most other 2D entries play, I would say that I find combat in 2D Zelda to be relatively simplistic and mindless in comparison to 3D Zelda games, which offer more of a challenge and require more strategy with each enemy encounter. And while incorporating RPG mechanics may seem like a radical departure, nothing outside of combat would really need to be changed at all. The game can still maintain the same exploration and puzzle-solving mechanics we all know and love, plus, Grezzo, the development team behind every 2D Zelda since Triforce Heroes, is no stranger to making RPGs, so it really is a perfect fit. A few years ago, Kirby finally made the jump to 3D after a 30-year wait, and this year, Donkey Kong is getting his first 3D adventure since the N64, and I'm really hoping that next time, it's Yoshi's turn. Yoshi has always been my favorite Nintendo character, and he honestly deserves more respect. His own series has historically been very hit or miss, with the original Yoshi's Island being widely regarded as one of the best platformers of all time, but other Yoshi games have pretty much just ridden the coattails of its greatness. Yoshi's Woolly World is pretty much the only one since the original to receive unanimous acclaim, and deservedly so, because that game's fantastic. But then came Yoshi's Crafted World, and I don't know, I liked it just fine, but it seems like most considered it to be yet another blah entry in a mostly blah series. Yoshi is in desperate need of a brand refresh. He needs a game that acts as a clean break from the series' stagnant formula and delivers a fresh and exciting new experience that reminds everybody of the eternal glory of Nintendo's greatest creation. And what better way to do so than for Yoshi to make his long overdue jump into the third dimension. It's all but guaranteed that Splatoon 4 is currently in the works. And while I'm sure the main multiplayer mode will be as addictive and rage-inducing as ever, I am very curious to see what the single-player mode will look like, since Nintendo has consistently innovated with these campaigns across all three titles. In the first two games, the single-player mode functioned like a fairly straightforward platformer in the vein of Mario 3D World. Splatoon 2's DLC campaign had a mission-based structure where each level had its own unique objective, and that carried over to Splatoon 3. But that game's DLC completely changed things up by adopting a roguelike structure, which was honestly my least favorite of all of these. Like, it was alright, but it got pretty repetitive. I think Splatoon 4's single-player should return to the platformer structure, but it should take a page from Mario Odyssey and feature massive sandbox levels with tons of secrets and collectibles and challenges. Splatoon has some of the best feeling controls of any game that I've ever played. That fluid, seamless movement would lend itself perfectly to a big open world. And I mentioned Mario Odyssey, but the more I think about it, Sonic Frontier should really be the game to take inspiration from. The world can be filled with tons of quick missions, with a new segment of the map being unlocked with each one you beat. But honestly, no matter what form this campaign takes, I'll be happy as long as it delivers yet another round of delightfully disturbing lore dumps. Calling it right now, we're gonna see humans in the next game. The Kirby series has been on a roll for like the past 15 years. If a game like Star Allies, which is at worst just okay, is considered a low point, that's a testament to the consistently high standard of quality the pink puffball has managed to maintain. And while I'm sure even more great Kirby titles, both 2D and 3D, are in store for us on the Switch too, there's a certain type of Kirby game that's become something of a lost art this past generation. It is well past time for another weird Kirby game. One that forgoes the usual formula of sucking up enemies and using copy abilities in favor of a wacky new gameplay style. Sure, we've had stuff like Super Kirby Clash, Kirby Fighters, and Kirby's Dream Buffet in recent years, but those are really just simplistic multiplayer eShop games built from reused assets. I'm talking about something in the vein of Kirby Canvas Curse, Rainbow Curse, Epic Yarn, and Mass Attack. Games that radically shook up the usual Kirby gameplay, but still felt like full-fledged single-player adventures. So what kind of new, off-the-wall idea should the talented folks at HAL pursue for Kirby? Honestly, I don't know. I guess I'm not that creative. If nothing else, a Rainbow Curse sequel would be cool. That'd be a perfect fit for mouse controls. I'm still relatively new to the Metroid series. Several years ago, I did play a few hours of Samus Returns before putting it down. But not because I didn't like it. I just didn't feel like playing my 3DS anymore once the Switch was out. Now Metroid Dread? I fucking devoured that game. Easily would have been my favorite of 2021 had Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart not existed. And then I played Prime Remastered, and editor, please insert Danny DeVito I get it meme here, because I completely understand why this game is regarded as a masterpiece. Even if it would have been nice if the remaster added autosaving, since there were a few times where I lost like 30 minutes worth of progress after dying, but anyway, I absolutely can't wait for Prime 4, which hopefully won't be the Switch 2's only Metroid title. It's a fairly safe bet that Mercury Steam is hard at work on another 2D game, but what about the next 3D one? The easier answer is Prime 5, but I've got something else in mind. I think it's time for Nintendo to take another swing at a third-person 3D Metroid game. The only other time this has been attempted was with Other M, and I'm aware that game does not have a very good reputation. But as far as I know, its problems had nothing to do with the third-person perspective. Now, the first-person format of Metroid Prime is great because of the level of immersion it offers. But the advantage of the third-person perspective is that combat can be way faster and more dynamic, allowing Samus to pull off all sorts of over-the-top badass moves that would otherwise be relegated to cutscenes. Nintendo absolutely should give this concept another chance, just as long as they make sure to make the game, good. The last potential game I want to talk about combines two different wishes of mine. So, Smash Brothers. I love it. I suck at it, but I love it. But I'm aware that it's far from a traditional fighting series, and while it's all but guaranteed that Smash will have a presence on Switch 2, whether it be a new game or a Switch 2 edition of Ultimate, I don't see why a more old-school fighting game in the vein of Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat can't also exist alongside it. It's been a while since Nintendo tried their hand at a genre they don't usually touch. The last time they did so was with the original Splatoon, which came out, Jesus Christ, 10 years ago. And if there's one thing Nintendo has certainly mastered, it's making their games accessible and beginner-friendly without sacrificing depth or strategy. So if there's any traditional fighting game that would be guaranteed to succeed in getting me accustomed to this genre, it would be one created by Nintendo. Now, this hypothetical new game could be a brand new IP, which I would welcome, or it can serve as the basis for a new Mario-Sonic crossover. Now, we know for a fact that the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games series is finished, because Nintendo and Sega no longer have the licensing rights. And honestly, good riddance. I mean, you bring Mario and Sonic together after years of rivalry, and this is the best you can come up with? Plopping them into the real-world Olympics? This might have been a cute idea for like 2, maybe 3 games, but why did we need 6 of these? Yes, it is indeed very funny to see Shadow ribbon dancing, but this is just such a waste of potential. Now, I understand why a Mario-Sonic crossover that's a platformer isn't exactly feasible from a gameplay standpoint. And I don't see a racing game happening either, since that would just step on Mario Kart's toes. An RPG could work, but I think a fighting game is by far the most exciting option. Not to mention that its roster would have plenty of room for characters who have basically no chance of joining Smash, like Waluigi. Okay, fine, I'm kidding. Even though Toad deserves it way more, sorry not sorry. It's not lost on me that the lead up to the Switch 2's launch was way more tumultuous than usual, between the prices and the whole game key card thing and, the T word. And while people have every right to voice their complaints about those things, it's important to remember that the rank-and-file developers who create Nintendo's games are not the ones calling the shots when it comes to business decisions. I completely understand why everybody's pissed about Mario Kart World being $80. In fact, I agree that it shouldn't cost that much. But at the same time, I can't help but feel a little bad for the devs, because instead of people talking about how incredible this thing they spent so many years working on looks, the discourse has been almost entirely centered around something they never had a say in. I bring this up to illustrate why, in spite of all the drama, I'm no less excited for the Switch 2 generation than I was originally, because at the moment I have no reason to believe that Nintendo won't continue to deliver some of the highest quality games in the business. And that's what matters most to me. If you personally don't find this system to be worth buying, that's fine, that's your choice. All I ask is that you don't shame others who do, Because value is subjective. Each and every person has different things in life that bring them joy. And for reasons I don't think I need to explain, right about now, we can all use as much joy as we can find.